I don't get enjoyment out of it. I'm not one of those people where, I'm going to make my hamburger and I'm feeling the meat and I'm just like, yeah, you got blown the out, cow. Yeah, when they cut your head off. I'm not like doing that. I'm kind of like grossed out and disgusted when I have to like go through animal corpse. It's gross to me. It is. It's nasty.
Understandably, in 2021, we have a lot of talk about virtue signaling. But what I see is people losing touch with what virtue signaling really means and why it really matters. And this is something that cuts across the whole political spectrum, left, right, and center, all kinds of different situations and scenarios. Virtue signaling is a problem because people are signaling virtues that they do not, in fact, have. And the undercurrent, the irony, is that when you meet people who really have experience in those fields of human endeavor, who really do have those virtues, even if it's dubious or questionable whether or not these things are virtues to be had, they don't talk that way, they don't act that way, they don't feel that way at all. I get fan mail on this channel for all kinds of different things once in a while because of my discussions of my own experience with humanitarian work. Nobody in their right mind could possibly say that when I describe my own experience with humanitarian work, I'm virtue signaling, because I don't even think it was virtuous, right? Now, when I was in Cambodia and when I was in Laos, both doing humanitarian work and attempting to do humanitarian work, two different things, I sometimes met people who had just arrived there from Africa. They've been doing humanitarian work in Africa, like sometimes Ethiopia, different parts of Africa, sometimes West Africa, wherever they were. And when I met them, there was no virtue signaling. You never once met one of these guys and they thought they'd accomplished something great. They'd show up and they'd be like, yeah, I just got here from Somalia. I remember one case, it was a guy who just got there from Sudan. Just showed up, there was civil war type conditions going on in Sudan at that time. Yeah, I just got here from Sudan. Oh, the project was a failure about 8 ways out of 10. Everything was messed up. We tried hard. There was a big budget. We didn't really accomplish anything we wanted to accomplish. But I guess we meant well. Maybe we did more harm than good. Maybe we shouldn't have done this project at all to begin with, And then they meet a guy like me, and I'd be saying, oh, yeah, I just finished this project here, and it was a failure, and I think it maybe did more harm than good. And, we'd be comparing notes. We'd be comparing experiences man to man, and there's no virtue signaling, right? There may actually be some virtue there. When you talk to people who've really fought in wars, just because this was an autobiographical account from what people call the Vietnam War. This is actually on the Laotian border, this particular story. I read this guy's account, what he actually did during the war. And it was like, yeah. There was one battle that took place in one night so suddenly that, if you were asleep, you would have missed it. There was this one really brief battle. And then they were in a siege where they did nothing but watch and wait for 5 years. And then they had another battle. I think that battle lasted 2 or 3 days. And that was his experience of the war. So he was at war for like more than 5 years, 2 battles, 5 years of waiting in between. Right? What do you think if you talk to the guy? I was just reading his written account, but I've met and talked to all kinds of soldiers, been all kinds of. Do you think there's virtue signaling there? And there may be some real virtue. There may be some real courage and heroism and steadfastness to be celebrated and appreciated about this guy. It might be, you look at this and say, look, man, not everybody could do what you did in the war. Even if what you did was just ration out your food and make sure you didn't starve and keep the camp clean and wake up every day and watch and wait the enemy. There were a few bombs and bullets going off, but basically nothing happened for 5 years. But hey, you didn't give up. You didn't lose your nerve. And that's why eventually you won, I guess. You won your little victory. You made your little tiny contribution to this war in which more than 1 million people died. You know, there's something. If you want to, you can have a parade. If you want, a parade is virtue signal, right? It's a celebration of heroism, something that may not even really be virtuous. Okay, what we have going on in the 21st century today, the reason why it's a problem, right? On the one hand, is that nobody wants to really question the virtues. You know, 5 years, you go to university, you get a university education in 5 years. You do a lot. Spending 5 years of your life dug in, holding a gun, staring at the enemy, watching, waiting, eating food rations. What are we celebrating here? You know, is it a virtue? Would you do it for 5 years right now? You want to go to Syria? You want to go to Myanmar? You want to go fight for democracy in Myanmar? You want to go sit in a trench for 5 years? Maybe accomplish nothing and maybe lose. Maybe you're one of the guys who dies. Maybe you're one of the guys who lays down his life. Is that a virtue? Does that interest you? Huh? You want to be a hero? You want people to say you're a hero? You want people to have a fucking parade with your name on the flag? Is that what you want? Myanmar's open for business. Civil war ain't over yet, guys. War for democracy. Some of you, it's what you've been saying on Instagram and Facebook. You've wanted your whole life, right? Here's your chance to be a hero. Who wants it? Who wants some? Right? Are these things virtuous? There's something really profound to think about there, right? And there's something profound to think about how it applies to your life. Nobody wants to question the virtues, right? And the problem is people are lining up to signal virtues they don't have, to try to lay claim to a kind of experience of the human condition they've never even thought all the way through. And if they were out having some real world experience, even if you weren't doing it yourself, if you met people who are war veterans, if you met people who've done humanitarian work in Sudan, in Ethiopia, or Cambodia, you'd start to get the picture of what people learn from, you know, the imperfection and tragedy of human nature, from the real world struggle to do something good, to just be a decent human being in a world where there's so little decency. Okay? Because you can show up at a refugee camp and all you see is prostitution and gambling and corruption, if not kidnapping and human trafficking and worse, right? There were all these, I wrote articles about it, I wrote exposés showing it. There were these humanitarian projects in northern Laos. They were supposedly feeding and clothing the poor, and they were getting, 14-year-old girls pregnant. They were getting involved with, statutory rape, underage sex, and prostitution. And, the so-called humanitarian workers are the only people with money to spend in villages full of starving people. And this is what happened. And the Catholic Church has a story like that going back centuries, right? This ain't new. And I think the virtue that's the easiest to fake of all is compassion. Is people saying that they care. Is people saying that they feel bad for others. When the fact is, they don't care. They don't feel that way. Quite apart from the fact that if they did have any other feelings of that kind, they're not about to actually get up and do something about it.
I think that vegans, for the most part, are pretty selfless, and not for the reason you guys think. Sure, they are saving animals, and I personally do like most animals, some more than others, which is why I don't eat a dog or a cat, which is a weird argument that they like to use sometimes. But as much as I appreciate their heroism of saving animals by not eating them so that other people can eat them, the real reason that vegans are so selfless is because, they just manage to literally sacrifice themselves for it. So yeah, I have considered, for the sake of avoiding the grossness of eating an animal corpse, going vegan, and because it's nice to help the animals. But I just don't think I'm selfless enough to literally sacrifice myself and my sanity for an animal. If I weren't so selfish, I really would go vegan. I don't like animal cruelty. I'm a huge advocate of animals being treated nicely And it's like, oh, well, how do you do that when you eat meat? Because, bitch, we gotta survive. That's why.
Maybe we can practice doing puppet show together.